from the twisted realm of science and the darkest pits of reason comes chilling tales of godlessness. Bear witness to the unfathomable terror that is the Good Atheist.
We were at the gym, and I was saying, how about this? How about I put together the talking points for the next episode? And you
I
were
agree
like,
that you could do that.
And then we didn't. And then
Yeah,
you didn't.
then you didn't.
What do you mean that I didn't?
You didn't do anything. I asked you, hey, so what are the talking points? And you're like, there's this one thing, tennis player, blah. And that was it. That was it. That was the work you put in.
You were like, I have this stuff, and
Yeah, because you're like, well, what's the show going to be about? You know, I'd be willing to throw away everything that I have written on this paper for today's show, based on your preparation. Are you ready?
No,
Of course not.
You already pushed me out. You already
Oh,
closed the door.
you don't fight for anything?
You
Am
know-
I that much? Do I dominate you that much?
You would be a terrible boyfriend, Jake. I just want to let you know that you're extremely inconsiderate, and you just don't the subtleties.
Don't you know girls I date sometimes listen to my shows? All right. Well, since apparently I'm a tyrant, let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to talk about. Number one, we're going to talk about...
Because I have no say.
You have no say. We're going to talk a little bit about some serious stuff. We're going to talk about in Nigeria, some children being abandoned and essentially being for being witches. We're going to also be talking about, in India, some very strange things happening to famous people there. They're seemingly doing very innocent things, and meanwhile being very harshly reprimanded. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about a gripe that I have with one of the presidential candidates. But you'll find out at the end of the show.
Whoa, what a
Whoa, what a hook!
Very nice.
You like that, eh?
Yeah,
It's
I
my
do.
first hook.
Nice.
It's really exciting.
First hook of the series.
First hook of the series. Okay, so talking about a bummer. Now, I don't know if you did any research or if you followed the
You know
link
what?
and the information
This
I gave you about this.
really was too depressing, because there was some videos that this is the Nigeria thing, the
Yes, this
Nigerian
is
witch
the
things, and
witch thing.
I read as much as I could before I got really depressed, and then I went to cuteoverload.com for like an hour to try and get myself out of this funk. So you guys just got to watch out, because this is pretty disturbing.
It's really disturbing. Now, the story in full, so I can recap, is essentially, I was mentioning before how Africa is essentially kind of like the battleground of religions really trying to establish themselves. You have the Muslim religion, and you have Christianity, and they're vying for pretty much converts. And like what happens with any religion that comes into a place that already has established protocols and traditions, is that they usually try to merge these with the kind of tenets of, whatever religion, say, well, in this case, Christianity, and they try to make it work. So it's a combination, say in Nigeria, for instance, it's a combination of this shamanism, witch doctor, combined with, kind of like the Old Testament, we despise witches and burn them alive kind of a combination. A very friendly combination.
Oh, what a fun vibe.
It's a really fun vibe. And in this case, what's happening is that there are people like that, I guess they call themselves priests. I would call them probably butchers. But anyways, what they do is they charge individuals a certain fee for deliverances. And these deliverances are basically them going over and doing an audit of why this family is cursed. Now, in Nigeria, probably everyone's pretty goddamn cursed. They don't have any food, and things are always bad.
Not to talk negatively about Nigeria, but yeah, to live there.
It wasn't voted one of the best places to live. Let's just say it ranks pretty poorly on best places to both live and visit. But in this case, you're bound. You have three cows. One of them's probably going to die of, I don't know, some crazy disease. And all of a sudden you're like, what happened? So they decide that they're going to pay these priest guys, which are making mad cash. Now, a deliverance costs roughly what they make in about 3 or 4 months of salary. That they're charging the mad cash. And what these guys are doing is they're putting the blame on kids. So they're saying one of your child, so they'll just pick one of them, and they'll say this child is a witch. They're the reason why you're having all of these problems. Have a good day.
Wow.
Yeah, and what happens is that pretty much the parents, who are both superstitious and, I guess...
Come on, you can say it.
What?
Are you going to say
Stupid?
ignorant?
Stupid? Ignorant? No, well...
Ignorant?
if you lack education, you think your daughter might be a witch. Yeah, you probably qualify for the title of ignorant. Yeah, you have that title.
Yeah, I would agree.
Now, what they do is they'll either beat these kids. There's, I don't know if you watched the video, but there were kids that had rope burns so serious that they were down to the bone. Kids that had nails driven into their heads, whipped, starved. And there's this one guy who basically kind of took them all in, and he had to go to a remote location to have this orphanage because other villagers who've heard that they're witches are just like, oh, this place is cursed, and they throw rocks at them and do all kinds of really horrible, nasty, depressing stuff. So that's the sum of the story, basically what's happening. Now, I want to hear your opinion other than this sucks variety.
You know what? It's too bad because I was just going to say, man, that just really sucks. It really, really sucks. Now, what I have to wonder about this is because my general ignorant understanding of how these religions are spread is typically you've got spokespeople in there, you've got the white man there, usually overseeing how things are going. So where are they when all of this is happening? Why are they not able to basically... basically take a look at how the church is dealing with, say, spread of AIDS and condoms and stuff like that. The church makes policy in Africa, and it actually spreads around and stuff like that. So where is the church right now spreading policy on this topic?
Well, you have to understand, though, in cases like this, it's not as though the Catholic Church, just as an example, has control over these constituencies. They're independent churches that are established by these guys. These priests open up churches. And they have a congregation. They're not receiving
not
orders
or anything like that.
They're frocked.
Yeah, like with the whole idea of they're when you got like a priest is usually assigned by the church,
by the archdiocese.
So I guess in Africa it's a little bit more loose.
It's a little more
organic. Loose. Things are like oh, we finally assigned a priest and the priest was killed. Okay, let's just the priest's son now takes over because
I don't even know if it's that
elaborate.
That elaborate. I just think it's a guy who's like I bought a Bible. I'm pretty sure I can do this.
Or I like power.
I like power and money. Therefore, I will create a congregation. So yeah, there's really no one that can come over and say, "Hey, stop, everybody! You're not doing it right." And really, who can you say that of any religious practice? Really, who has the say? Sure, you can say the Pope can go over and smack everybody else in the back of the head and say, "Stop preaching this," but you can't stop people.
I don't know. You figure, you got missionaries out there spreading the word of God. You figure they'd want them to get it right. Obviously, typically the people who are hardcore enough to go over to Africa usually have a couple of crazy ideas on their own, but, you got to figure this is way outside their scope even.
Yeah, but they're not going to stay there forever. Say you go over there and you have a particular image of what God's like and what Christ's message is and that kind of stuff, right? So you go over there and you tell everybody, and this guy is listening to you, and he's like, oh, yes, that's very good. You leave... 2 years later, your term is up, and he's like, okay, time for 360, everybody. Screw what that guy was saying. Let's do things my way. Yeah. And you know what? This is more, for me, it's more upsetting in terms of, I don't actually put the blame necessarily on, this is a Christian thing. It's not that.
I will agree with you on that. I'm not blaming the religions. I'm just saying that they're partially responsible.
I'd say definitely there's... Well, the partial responsibility exists in the fact that the tenets that allow these people to do this exist within the Bible itself.
I know, but also look at the idea. Basically, this is just window dressing. These people here would probably do this regardless of if they were Christian or Muslim or just generally whatever. It's not really a religious thing. It's more of an ignorant thing based on superstition.
Yes, the problem definitely is superstition. This is what I'm saying.
But the church should be using superstition to counter superstition. They should be like, listen, your kids are not demons or devils or whatever else. Stop doing this or you really will feel the wrath of God.
Well, I think that the one thing they should definitely do is denounce these guys and make it clear, send a message saying, like, you can't do this. This is unacceptable. The problem is that, when you're in a glass house, you can't go around throwing bricks with hand grenades attached to them. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you're saying your superstition is foolish, our superstition is right. Like, combating superstition with superstition is a bit like trying to fight a fire with gasoline. Okay? Doesn't exactly work. you need to douse that. And maybe I think what they need is, I don't know, a healthy dose of skepticism?
Atheism?
Well, I'm not going to say atheism, but I will say skepticism. For God's sakes. I mean, like, these are... And the fact that people are doing this to their own children, I mean, boggles my freaking mind. I mean, these are your kids. Okay, maybe you got 20 of them. I don't know. Maybe one of them you don't like.
You just gotta
If
understand
that possibility exists.
The value of life over there is
different.
Is different because, life is so fucking harsh. It's so absolutely harsh over there. It's just, yeah.
You know what though? I mean, from what I've heard of people that go over there, their general experience is that people are very close in families, that they're very friendly, that communities are really strong. So I think that it has less to do with this, this blanket of
this
life isn't meaning.
Westerners view
Westerners
of
view
Africa, where it's like, well, everybody must just hate living anyways.
because living must be miserable. No, and
no
I think
television.
I think it's just we don't understand the overwhelming power of superstition because we don't really experience it on a day-to-day basis. I mean, your superstition is like, I'm not going to cross a black cat that walks by me. I mean, like, ooh, it's not like, I must slit this cat's throat that walked by me because otherwise my family will be cursed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
and
it's not that hardcore.
And there will be a drought and everything else.
Like, for them, I mean, if that belief is so real to them that it represents, objective reality, for them, the only way to save themselves and to save their village, to save their family, is literally to torture this child. They're like, it's got to be done.
You know what? I want to turn something around on you and throw it in your face.
Okay.
I'm going to find this kind of amusing, and you're not really going to get this until I kind of go halfway through. So bear with me here.
Yes, sir.
You remember your argument about global warming?
Sure.
And how you basically said that sure, there is the possibility that global warming may not actually be caused by man, but the chance that they are is so. There's a chance that we are, and do we really want to take the chance by ignoring it that we'll end up, destroying the earth? Why don't we just go with the idea of less pollution is good, less this and that, because the consequences will be, potentially so horrific.
Sure.
So now you say the idea of these superstitious people where they're saying, okay, well, this cat crossed my path, or my child might be a devil. The child might not be a devil, but hey, maybe I should kill him anyways, just in case he is. You see where I'm going?
I definitely see where you're going.
Like, you've got a rational explanation, and to them, that line of argument is probably very rational in their mind too, and this is probably why they're doing it.
No, absolutely, I agree with you. They're thinking, I have to cut my losses, and I have to do the lesser of two evils. Either I let everybody die, or I do this. But obviously, that's a false dichotomy. When I talk about, say, global warming, for instance, like, really the options do boil down to very select choices. In their instances, is it really a choice of saying I either torture this child or, we're going to suffer horrible damnation and hell? They don't understand the other options. That's the real problem, and their superstition makes it so that any other option to them seems either foolish, alien, or a complete waste of time. And I mean, you want to talk closed-minded to the fact that you're not willing to listen to anyone else that says this is just silly superstition. Please stop killing and torturing your children. Yeah, it's pretty closed-minded here. That's pretty amazing. And again, like I said, I mean, this is just another example of any time where just this deep-rooted superstition manages to combine itself with the allure and the credibility of Christianity, for instance, or within those regions, because, again, I mean, Christian institutions have been there for a long time. Many of them have probably done a lot of great work. So all of a sudden you're like, hey, I'm a church.
I'm part of the Christian thing, and I'm saying kill your kid.
And what I'm saying is that the response should be, like, right now, for this disgusting shit, definitely has to come from the churches themselves, who not only have to denounce that, but I think that it's part of their responsibility to go over there and be like, and to start fixing this shit, because anything that's used in your name and is abused, you can't just sit there and say, well, they're being bad Christians. It's not good enough.
Yeah,
it's not freaking good enough.
The church tried to just kind of poo-poo, bad kind of behavior on account of people in their church back in that whole, child molestation thing. Yeah. That didn't work.
No,
out
it blew
too
up in
well
their it blew up in their faces.
Yeah.
They lost probably many, many constituents.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to something a little bit more well, I wouldn't say hilarious, but just equally as silly. Now, this is your story, so I'm going to let you develop
okay.
it.
We're going to talk about my story.
We're going to talk about your story happening in India.
Thank you for giving me permission to talk about
What
my
do you
story.
want me to do, huh? Do you want me to massage you? Is that what it's going to take?
No,
huh? Okay,
no,
next time, you know what?
I don't think
Listen,
anybody talked about...
I'm going to make a message. No. I'm going to say something to all the listeners. I promise that next episode will be entirely dictated by Ryan Harkness.
And you know what? It's going to be so much better than all the other episodes that you...
Stay tuned for episode 16.
Everybody will be messaging going, never ever let Jake put together another dry, boring show, and Ryan is the man.
All right, we'll see. And what if it's really the opposite of saying, wow, what a flop? Put your money where your mouth is, bitch.
Then I will bow my head to you, oh master.
Okay, that sounds like a pretty fair compromise.
So may I speak now, master?
Sure.
Okay, in India, there is a tennis player by the name of Sania Mirza, and she is like an up-and-coming, really young,
you can say
fresh,
hot. We're allowed to say that.
Sexy Indian tennis player. Now she's gotten a lot of flack over the past few years, obviously, because one of the main
she's
reasons,
a rebel.
Well, I mean, she's playing female tennis, and as everybody who watches female tennis knows, they're
all lesbians.
Not all lesbians, but they're all dressed very provocatively, and it's very enjoyable to watch them.
Yes, absolutely.
Play tennis.
Things bounce around.
Exactly. So basically, she's already been getting a lot of flack, but it just basically exploded a couple of weeks ago when she was in Perth and she was playing at a tournament, and a photo came out of her barefooted with her feet up on the conference table, and the way that the photo was taken made it look like her feet were touching an Indian flag. Now, basically, this has caused a whole big outrage in India, because all of a sudden you've got this woman who's already being basically called an infidel for running around in short skirts. Scorched shirts? Yeah.
I like scorched shirts.
I like them too. They sound hot.
It sounds pretty phenomenal.
So now, basically, before it was more the fundamentalists that were really giving her a hard time, but now you've got a good contingency of average people in India calling on her to be jailed for 3 years for, what was it again?
It's a special law called the Prevention of Insult to the National Honor Act.
Very nice.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That sounds like an open-minded law. Be like, you shall not defame your country.
And it always amazes me when you get situations like this where you've got someone like her who's showing a progressive side of India that I'm sure many Indians embody and enjoy, and then it gets pressed for all the wrong reasons. I found this information on a mainstream news source, and it was basically, it's the mainstream news again going tisk tisk, look at this stuff in the middle. Anytime you have anybody moving forward, you have all these people making a big deal out of it. It's like, are we really moving forward, or is all of this negativity about it just making it more obvious that Indians are just set in their old ways?
I think it's kind of like funny that it just displays this really huge differences that we're just not willing to admit between different cultures' values. Mm-hmm. There's this idea that cultures are essentially like, well, it's what they do and it's right for them, and what we do is right for us, and there is no right and wrong, and it's cultural relativeness, right? Mm-hmm. I've never been a proponent of that. You know this. Mm-hmm. I think that cultural relativity is basically garbage. And the reason I think that it's garbage, and I've outlined this before, but I'll say it again now, is it's kind of the same way that you use science to understand the world. Depending on how sophisticated that tool is, it will in turn determine how sophisticated your understanding is. So if you're using, a crappy-ass ruler to try to measure the world, you're going to probably be off by a lot. If you use satellite imagery and trigonometry, you're probably going to get pretty damn close.
So are you calling Indian culture a crappy ruler?
No, what I'm saying is that in every culture, you can't look at it only as a whole. Mm-hmm. There's many different elements that you could probably say are culturally advanced, and many other elements you could say are culturally backwards. Because no one has it all right. No one does it, perfectly. But, again, you can't just say, well, I'm going to take a look at a whole, and as a whole it's crappy, therefore they're retarded. Mm-hmm. But we've come to a lot of understanding, for instance, of just about human nature, about race even. And the one thing in India, for instance, the social class is based on ideas of race. You'll notice that people that are lighter skinned typically are part of the wealthier class, and people with darker skin are part of the untouchables and all this other kind of stuff, right? And that has a lot to do with their view of race. From what I understand, they were actually kind of like intermixed with another sort of more Caucasian kind of group of nomads that were like cow herders or something like that. It had a huge influence. Don't quote me on this, but there is definitely a correlation to them, at least between social status and race. And that idea is sort of like a culturally backwards idea of superiority of a particular race or different huge differences in races. And we know that's not true. We know genetically there's more variation between an individual than between a race, quote unquote. So what I'm saying is that if you look at Indian culture, Indian society, I mean, there's a lot of things in which they're advanced. I mean, like, for instance, the Indian Institute of Technology is like MIT, Harvard, and all this other kind of stuff combined. It's phenomenal. I mean, they have a lot of like advanced engineers and all this other kind of stuff, and that's cool. Yeah. On the flip side, they have all of these remnants of their culture that doesn't mix well with kind of like the advances that have been going on, and there's a reaction, there's a pendulum effect where all of a sudden, these conservative, these insular people fight back harder, create ridiculous laws like putting someone in jail for talking smack,
or putting their feet up
near a flag, and those are always reactionary. In the modern world, fundamentalism is a response to modernism. Fundamentalism didn't exist 150 years ago. It's just because of the pace in which things move and progress.
It's basically modernism pushing one way and conservatives trying to push back the other.
Well, modernism moves so rapidly that you can't even describe it as modernism anymore. It's just even faster than that. But on the other side, conservatism that moves backwards moves at the lightning speed backwards, and that's fundamentalism. And that's in a country like India that's divided between groups of highly educated, highly cultured individuals, and at the flip side, very poorly educated, culturally backwards, in my opinion, like still in the 4th century kind of mentality. There's a huge dichotomy here. There's a huge conflict happening, and this is leading for these ridiculous charges.
These Bollywood actresses being kicked out of the country because they had the misfortune of
being kissed on the cheek by Richard Gere, right?
I won't say that's not without some justification, but
he is dirty.
You know what she did say though? Not on the lips. Very pretty woman-like.
Well, she was prim proper. We would almost say that we would say that she did nothing that I wouldn't do. I'd let Richard Gere kiss me, buddy.
Very nice.
All right, should we move on, or is that...
I'm pretty much done with it. I just, parting words on this one here is I just got to think that, whenever stuff like this comes up, there has to be somebody that says, this is stupid, and it has to come from within the Indian community itself, or within whatever community that it comes from. To me, it's kind of like having that racist grandparent who, would say something bad about homosexuals, and it's like, it's not enough for the kid to just be ashamed. There's a certain amount of respect that you have to give to your elders, but at the same time you have to be like, Granddad, shut the hell up with your damn homophobic crap. Like, you're an idiot in that regard.
Keep your racist comments to yourself.
It's not even keep your racist comments to yourself. It's like, that doesn't fly anymore. Shut the hell up. It's like, and it's hard. I understand. It's like, we all love our granddads. And
they're so friendly and smiley, and they give us candies.
Except when it comes to homosexuals or people of color. So it's like you just got to stand up and you got to do something about it, because otherwise, I mean, you're just going to look like it's
okay.
You're implicit just because of your silence.
Yeah, no, you are a partner in that crime through your silence, is what you're saying. I agree. I say that it's the same thing with any time there's like, an Islamic fundamentalist that does something, and the general Islamic community just says,
they say this doesn't really represent whatever. But you know what? To me, it's like they have a responsibility, just like the Christian church has a responsibility in Africa to go, this is
bullshit.
This is bullshit. We got to go and we got to do something about this. We got to pull this out by the root and destroy it. It's the same thing for modern moderate Muslims is they have to take up arms and fight to get their religion back because it's been hijacked.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's move on to the next subject, which is the... Now, this guy's been appearing in the news. He won in Iowa, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, dear God, he did?
He did. Well, I mean, the primaries. Anyways, so... I was reading some quotes, and I've been following him a little bit because I don't like him. I don't like him as a person. I mean, he seems amicable, but really he's been described as thin-skinned, as mean, and as very slippery. I mean, he make Bill Clinton look like he was made of glue. Anyways, I'm talking about Mike Huckabee, who in it seemed like a nonchalant affair. I forget where it was. It was where was it? It was in Michigan. That's where it was. Warren, Michigan, where he was just talking about the Constitution. Now I'm going to just read the whole quote because the whole quote needs to be read. It says, "I have opponents in this race who do not want to change the Constitution, but I believe it's a lot easier to change the Constitution than it would be to change the word of the living God. And that's what we need to do, is amend the Constitution so it's in God's standard rather than trying to change God's standard so it lines up with some contemporary view of how we treat each other and how we treat the family." Okay, now, your first thoughts when hearing that. I want to hear them.
Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. One of the things about the Constitution is it's pretty sweet. I mean, other than that whole bear arms things, and honestly, that's being taken out of context. So
it was all about bear arms, like, bear arms, you have the right to them.
I would have rather had Wookiee arms, but that's just me. But I mean, for all of the flaws of the Constitution, overall, I'd say it's a pretty solid document. And for people to go in there and mess with one of the basic tenets of it, which is basically the separation of church and state, is perhaps the most terrifying thing ever. Because, I mean, take a look at all of the other countries around the world where church and state are not separated, and you get the idea that it's a bad idea to remove that. It's just terrible. It's just a really bad idea.
I like his use of the word contemporary. Now, I'm just going to quote you from Webster's dictionary definition of contemporary is marked by characteristics of the present period. Yes, he's right. We cannot be marked by these characteristics of present period. We must instead go back to 2,000 years ago. They had it right. I like this stoning people for working on Sunday. I believe this is a God standard. My question to Mike Huckabee, at least for this, is what is God standard exactly? What parts would you put in? You're going to just kind of like, grab some random pages, mix it all up and say, yay, we have a new Constitution. Try to make some sense out of it. I'm like, Mike, do you even think that you can comprehend and create a document yourself that challenges the Constitution in terms of how wicked it is? I mean, I am not an American. I am still a big fan of the Constitution itself because of two things. One, obviously, is the separation of church and state, but two is this idea that they wanted to create a system of checks and balances. And I got news for you. A church does not have checks or balances, okay? It has divine authority, and it has, a pyramid structure of you say what the hell has been revealed to me, and you're just going to follow what I say, and that is it. There is no checks and balances. There's no anti-pope that can overrule through a constitutional majority what the pope decides. This doesn't happen. Yeah. Anything that would follow, any government structure that follows the religious, documents of, say, the Bible or whatever, follows the same structure of plutocracies, oligarchies, or dictatorships. Those are your three choices, Mikey. Which one do you want? Do you want dictator Huckabee? That sounds pretty damn terrifying.
Yeah.
Let's just see. Well, he did such a good job raising his son. Surely a man whose son strangled and slit the throat.
Hung a stray dog up from a tree and slit its throat with a knife.
Didn't he torture them or something?
He also tortured it.
Wow.
You see, that's where you get into the alleged. Oh. It's like, but they do have proof that the dog was hung up hung and had its throat slit with a knife.
Well, who hasn't done that when they're
Who
17
hasn't? I
on
don't
a
even
bender?
On a crazy scout thing.
Well, dude, we don't live in...
Typically, conservatives limit their scout troop camping things to strange acts of homosexual...
homoerotic.
Yes, it's true, it's true.
Be like, no girls allowed. Be like, this is a fun group.
Yeah.
Be like, screw that. But it's other thing that Mike has done. Like, one of the things that really upset me too was that there was this this serial rapist who he let go.
He pardoned.
He pardoned. Well, he didn't actually pardon. He got in a lot of crap that he was going to pardon him because it turns out that the rape victim was a distant cousin of the Clintons. Mm-hmm. So, thinking that he was just a victim of the Clinton brigade out to get him, he figured, well, I'm going to take this guy's side. It didn't also hurt the fact that the guy had claimed that he had been a born-again Christian and evangelical, and now he was reformed. So he pretty much gave a stamp of approval to the parole board, and a little bit while later, the guy raped and murdered a woman, and it's kind of been with him ever since. And it kind of like goes back to this idea that some really strongly religious folk have this retarded idea in their heads that if someone else displays the same level of religious fervor, they have to be good people. I can't believe this man was a rapist. He believes in Jesus Christ. Why would anyone rape if they believe in Jesus Christ? And
as well, you got to take a look at the flip side of what that implies, how they think about people who don't believe in Jesus Christ. And
what does that say about it?
Yeah, you're not looking at people based on actual merits. You're basing things based on religious opinions, which is always really great.
Now, you know what? The last time anyone said anything as scary as Mike Huckabee said that, it was pretty much Pat Robertson and his ilk that essentially want to create a fascist theocracy in the United States of America. Now, I don't know what his intentions are in his mind. Perhaps he thinks to himself, well, the Bible is such a moral guide that I must interject it in the Constitution, which, by the way, is not a moral treatise. It is a treatise on government. It is not a treatise on law, which you should also not freaking mess with your Bible, but this is a different topic. It's a treatise on government. I don't recall anywhere in the Bible telling you how you should actually manage your government. Pretty much trying to deal with other personal issues and, getting tortured by God, when you're poor Job there for a bet with
just
Satan.
As a test.
Yeah, it was a bet. It was literally a bet. He got fucked over for a bet with Satan. I'm like, man, that is messed up.
Didn't he kill his son?
No, that's Abraham who was about to sacrifice his son, and then God said, "Just
Psych,
kidding."
Psych.
Well, actually, no, he didn't. He didn't even do that. He replaced his son with a sheep. So he thought he was going to kill his son, but he was like, "Nah, I'm just messing with you, man. Woo! I'm crazy like that."
You got punked by God.
Anyway. Man, back then he was allowed to do anything. Yeah. But yeah, what I'm saying is that's like the scariest thing that he could ever say. I think I'm not sure enough people paid really close attention to that. And even if you're a Republican, we must have one or two that listen to the show.
We got to have a lot. in our other projects, it turns out that a significant amount of the people who read and listen to us are Republicans.
Okay, fine. So they'll listen to the show, and I gotta say, like, just because you're a Republican doesn't mean you're Bible thumping around. Maybe you believe. Okay, fine. Well, I can't change your mind. You're already listening to the show 16 times and haven't changed your mind. I'm probably not going to now, but please, for the love of your God and for the love of my science, please do something about this crazy motherfucker, because he is seriously throwing a wrench in this, semi-functional, once great but getting kind of flushed down the tube nation of yours here.
I'm just here's my whole opinion of it. Is it seems like America is traveling down a bit of a dark path, and I kind of thought a couple of years ago, when you had the chance, or when Americans had the chance to kick Bush out of office, that they were going to do it. It never really occurred to me that the Democrats might lose, and I admit Democrats were pretty spineless, and
they still are.
They're still extremely spineless, but if the Republicans are going to come back into power, I really have to pray that it's going to be an administration that's going to at least change directions from weakening constitutional protections, weakening the separation of church and state, and basically continuing to have such a war hawk attitude towards the rest of the countries in the world.
Yeah, it's a bit
like
of a frightening prospect.
these are the only things that I want. I'm like, you know what? At this point, an isolationist America, a libertarian America, to the point of privatization of everything, I would be okay with that if it just meant that we did not have war hawks, if we did not have religious fundamentalists. These are things I'm willing to accept if we toss those other items out the back door.
Yeah.
Because they really haven't been working well for anybody. They really haven't.
No, they've pretty much been messing all your shit up,
Yeah.
actually. They've made everyone else pretty much either hate you or all your friends be like, listen, I gotta go. I can't do this with you. I can't be seen with you.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyways, that's my 2 cents about Mike Huckabee, who I think is essentially a...
Satan. If Satan exists, his name would be Mike Huckabee.
All right. Well, not my statement, but yours, but whatever. I'm sure it'll be confused with mine, and later on, Mike Huckabee's goons will try to strangle me if he becomes president, which I will seriously move to the moon if that happens. All right, and with that, we're gonna leave you, and next week, stay tuned for Ryan's show.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.